So
Okay, great. Okay. I'm going to try sharing my screen. I believe it should be sharing. And we can kind of run the meeting from this agenda just so we don't miss any of these details. But yeah, basic overview will be client updates and then DevNet testing updates, spec discussions and updates, and then open discussion. So is Manu on? Maybe you want to kick us off with the Prism team update.
Yeah, hello, hi everyone. Yes, so during this week, I continue to work a little bit on the redesign of the database. So it is currently running on PeerDAS 5, but the one running is not fully optimized, so I work on some optimization. I also continue to work on unit tests this week. And I start to work on the backfill for data columns because right now we are able to backfill blocks and blobs, not data columns. And also I review some pull requests from base team, Francis and Niran, about getBlob v2, getPayload v5, and all the specification modification. Yeah, it was mainly that during this week.
Excellent, thanks. I don't know if Jimmy's on here. Is there another Lighthouse team member that wants to do that update? Perhaps not. I did flag, I don't know, there was discussion about a new branch, I believe, that they're working on. I just dropped that there. And Teku.
Yeah, no significant progress on this week. We were working on distributed blob publishing, but the changes in the spec now could push reconstruction just from the data column sidecar. We don't need to wait for block anymore, and this required some refactoring from our side, and we are working on it. That's all.
That's great. On the Lodestar side.
we've started implementing validator custody. Guys are doing great, spinning up that work. Still going through unit testing, and but so far refactor looks good as well. We are not doing the backfilling just yet this week. We're just doing the custody, basically changing the groups that are custodied, and then we'll probably start on backfilling, I would guess, maybe next week.
Excellent. Nimbus.
Yeah. So this week, I was working on an improvement using getBlobs v1. My initial idea was to bypass gossip validation if there is 100% hit rate, but in times when, like, I was testing with Sunnyside Labs, if we have a high blob count and basically there is partial responses from ELs, then it kind of weirdly doesn't apply that block anymore. It was a bit buggy. So right now we have some performance improvements with which we can basically race both blob gossip validation and getBlobs v1 with retries, such that whoever gets all of the blobs can apply, that process can apply the block. So with that, I think I tested it with Sunnyside, and we were testing on Pectra, and it kind of was working with around 30-ish blobs. I think there are better improvements that we can come up with in the next couple of weeks. I was working on the column syncer as well, that I had talked about like in the last couple of weeks. What it does is it improves the peer pool a lot. So what it would effectively do is it would find intersecting column custody and populate these peers into buckets. It would also, of course, work on better scoring if there is intersecting columns, and even better scoring if it's a supernode. I tested it today in the morning with Nimbus Get 1 in PeerDAS DevNet 5. It had been down since Friday. So Nimbus Get 1 synced pretty fast, like at least to my eye. And but we don't really have a concrete column sync speed like kind of inferred from that test yet. So I'm working on some better logging so that I can get some good metrics, and like I can kind of infer what kind of column sync speed it's actually giving me. Moreover, it doesn't really do peer filtering at all. It keeps requesting columns until I hit reconstructability, and I reconstruct, and then I persist whatever columns I need. So it kind of saves a good decent amount of time in peer filtering. This independent column syncer would actually also work along with the backfilling cases of validator custody. So that problem is more or less towards the end of being solved for us. Apart from that, there is some pending work to finish validator custody, and there is quite a lot of work on GetBlobs v2, which I haven't done a lot. So that's my focus for this week. And this is pretty much my update for this week.
Great, thank you. Grandine, I don't believe is able to get on the call, but I added their update here that they dropped into the Discord. Geth team. I think I saw Felix earlier. Maybe? Or Marius?
I don't know if Felix is here. I'm here. I updated the branch that I had for so that the node doesn't calculate the cell proofs on every block, but we calculate the cell proofs whenever we get a transaction from the transaction from the RPC or via the network, but we don't have the network changes yet. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like Francis from Base also implemented basically the same thing that I did, and yeah, I have to. I don't know if he's on, but if he's on, we should probably discuss whether we want to combine our efforts. Yeah. Otherwise, the networking stuff I will tackle at some point. That's it.
Yeah, hi, this is Francis. I think we definitely should think a little bit to combine the efforts. What I implemented is basically directly using cell proofs instead of any kind of computation. And the things I haven't done is kind of the same as you. I haven't changed the network wrapper yet. And the goal is to hopefully get one EL client, to be ready for integration so that we can test end-to-end changes. So yeah, let's think maybe after this.
Great, thanks. There was a note from Pari in the chat about CL teams moving to prioritize GetBlobs v2 over validator custody. Just so that everyone sees that. Another mine, FLCL.
Yep. Hello. So we have a branch with API according to the draft, implemented according to the draft, and as far as I see, according to the latest changes, we're also handling TX pool, new proof propagation. I mean, what else? It's still of proof of concept quality in some places, and for today, for example, we found an issue. We will use this courtesy setup provided to test it more. But like our aim was to implement everything needed for Osaka and provide to be integrated in to be used in end-to-end scenarios, test cases. Yeah, that's it.
I put my best attempt at summarizing. There was a side chat my morning that I CL side error. I think it was related to some integration testing that Barnabas started with the Nethermind implementation. I don't know if any of this should be discussed, but flagged it here.
Yeah, thanks for the notes. We fixed it, and I guess more notes will appear later.
Okay. Roman, ref update.
Yeah. So last week we did not prioritize PeerDAS, but this week we'll be actual work on it. So the update stays the same. It's 1 2 days of work, but yeah, this week we should be able to complete it.
Great. And I don't know, is there anyone from Aragon on the call? Okay. DevNet testing. Ari, Barnabas. I put a link to the new DevNet 6 specs here that we worked on. I flagged the one open question that you had on that sheet. And then there's also some updates. I don't know if this relates to the Steel team that I got in the side chat.
I don't think we have any DevNet updates for DevNet 5 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and for DevNet 6, I think we are still waiting for client teams to begin and work on the implementation. Once we have like maybe 2 or 3 client implementations, then we can start rolling out the DevNet slowly, and maybe we can make some deposits later or shift around some validators. But yeah, we can launch it maybe once we have 2 on each side, 2 EL, 2 CL, because there's no real point of doing that before that, in my opinion.
Okay. And then Dan or Felix, I don't know, Mario's on the call. I tried to summarize the update that you provided me from the Steel side of things here, if you want to do any voiceover.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Will. So basically, I don't have much more to say than's written in the agenda. Basically, I think Mario spoke to Alex and understood that basically the EL changes are limited to like the network wrapper, and because like EELs, like the reference spec implementation in Python doesn't touch this layer, we can't really, like, it's not really testable for us using the consensus tests that the East generates. But how we can test it is via a Hive engine simulator, and we'll start like adding tests there. But we haven't started working on this yet, so we don't really have any estimate of how long that'll take. I'm sorry about that. If
if Marius is still in the call, it would be awesome if you could read this update and tell me if he agrees with it, just to see if we're on the right track. Thanks.
Where did you put this update?
This
It's
is
in
just
the it's in the agenda issue from Will.
Okay, I will read it.
Thanks.
I think Minnie or Tame from the Sunnyside team.
Yeah, hey guys. Thank you, Will, for the summary. So this week we were testing on the individual client devnets. So like we were running 50 nodes of Lighthouse get pairs, like 50 nodes of Teku, Prism, Lodestar, Grandine, and we noticed like we identified how much blobs we can currently support with the from PeerDAS and mostly get blob v1 spec. So one of the things that we noticed in the test was how the declining get blob hit rate affected the PeerDAS's column reconstruction work and like network networking. So we were seeing get blobs hit rate probably correlating with the nodes unable to build blocks in time. So we have those discussions ongoing in Discord. So in the coming week, we are going to focus on running another suite of DevNet test, and it's going to be, we are trying to decouple get from these findings. So we first want to run the same test with another execution layer client and see like how the different implementation in regards to like blob pool, get blobs affect PeerDAS's throughput. And we also are going to run a DevNet without a get blob, but with PeerDAS. So we want to see how much blobs just with PeerDAS can support. So that's it. That is something that we're gonna do in the coming week. And then we were when we were analyzing the results from the DevNet, we noticed that there are like differences in the metric systems in the different clients. And I know that there is effort to standardize metrics in the different clients for the PeerDAS metrics. And I was wondering maybe if there's anything that we can help with, we would be glad to help like implementing like metrics in other clients that are not currently worked on right now. So that is something that we can do.
That's great. Thanks for the offer. I don't know if any of the client teams or researchers have any questions or want to discuss anything about findings from this past week or the strategy for next week. If not,
what's
we'll move
the
on.
Discord channel you mentioned, Minnie?
We are mostly talking in the PeerDAS testing channel.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know, when I looked at these results, I was kind of shocked how bad it was performing even with get blocks. So as I already wrote in the chat, I think we should be very careful not to make any decisions based on get blocks, because in my opinion, get blocks is just an optimization that we have, but the network, like the safe parameter, should be chosen without having get blocks, because we cannot, in the case of an attack where someone I don't know, bribes the big block producers to only include their blob transactions, then no one will have the blobs. So
Tapline.
Hey, I joined a bit late. I can give the Lighthouse update if you guys want.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we merged a PR for validator custody. It's not complete yet, but we are progressing. We fixed a tracing issue that was causing the validator client to crash, which had some issues with our testing. Then we updated the offload KCG proof computation PR to the latest pending spec, and Jimmy has a PR, which I think it's fully implemented, but not merged yet, but we are very close. And then we have a bunch of sync fixes that we also mentioned last time that we haven't merged yet, and that should fix the faulty node on the DevNet. But it's a bit complicated and it's going to take a bit of time. And other things we have pending is add the max blobs per block follow config parameter. And also we have a flag to advertise a false CGC so we can do more complex attacks testing. And that's it.
Great, thanks. Back to the testing, I saw some, I don't know, Pari, if there's anything about the discussion, I think you dropped regarding gossiping and V2, V3. Is that around get blobs V2, V3?
Yeah, so maybe we can start with the first one. I think there's a bit of confusion around the transaction types. Maybe we can first address that topic and then we can switch to the get blobs discussion.
Okay.
I think we're a bit confused what the difference is between type 3 transactions. Version, it feels like there are 3 versions or 2 versions.
I can take on that a little bit. So there should be only 2 versions. They should also always be like type 3 blob transaction type. Version 0 to be with blob proofs and version 1 to be with cell proofs. The version 2 was previously proposed as the new version, and we treat version 1 as the old version and version 2 as the new version, and have after some discussion we basically changed from the version 0 as the old version and version 1 as the new version. So that's kind of like maybe why we see like 0, 1, and 2. But hopefully, going forward, we only have like 0 and 1 as versions.
Okay, so it's basically a subversion. We have the existing version 0 and we have version 1, which is blobs with proofs by the transaction center.
Yes.
Okay, and is the idea that the RPC accepts both versions, and irrespective of which version is sent, that the node converts it before gossiping?
By RPC, what do you mean? I thought the version was like purely like network wrapper.
The execution layer node RPC.
Is that used for P2P or is that used for get blobs?
No, this is for submitting the blob. So let's say I submit the blob as I do today, so version 0, what happens in the RPC?
It's underspecified. It depends on how you want to do it in your implementation. Like it's not specified. Also, it's not specified if you already have an existing blob transaction in your transaction pool, whether you want to just drop it or whether you want to create the self-proof for it. That I think purely depends on what the client teams want to do.
Okay. Is the plan that we implemented? Sorry, go ahead.
I have a kind of like suggestion for that, which is I think we should just drop the old transactions and do not do conversion on the client side, like even delayed conversion, like when you are building the blocks. The reason being that we want basically all the block transactions to have self proofs as fast as possible, so that when the CEO kind of like tries to get it through get blobs or like some other means, they can get it like immediately without any potential delay that's caused by conversion or some otherwise, so that we can basically unblock the block building critical paths to be as fast as possible. And dropping it seems to be the easiest in terms of implementation, and also like generally improving the speed. So yeah.
Okay, so then we would need to specify that after the fork, only type 1 blob transactions exist in any mempool, as well as any P2P networking layer.
Yeah, kind of. It indeed may depend on implementation, and just some nodes will not agree to receive old proof types when it will be passed through network. Just will decline or not accept it and ignore it, or they may try to convert it into new blob type. It is clearly not a consensus question. So
yeah, but I think we just need to know for testing, because otherwise we're comparing apples to oranges, and it would be good to know that we know what strategies client teams are using at least.
It's indeed make cause issues on testing, because if you send old and new transactions from the same account, maybe some pools will be locked if all transactions will not be evicted, but still, yeah, so it's a good thing to test, to send both types before, after fork, during the fork.
Okay, yeah, so we still miss some tooling for doing type 1, and we'll work on that and how to specify if the sender should be using type 0 or type. And on the meantime, it would help if EL teams then drop a message on PeerDAS testing as to what your strategy is. So do you convert when you receive it in the RPC? What happens at the fork? What's in your mempool? And so
I thought we agreed on the last call, like to leave the conversion logic to the ELs and not like specify
no,
in
as
the
in
specs.
we just want to know what you're doing, as in
okay,
write down what you're doing so we don't have to read your code.
Okay. I think it would make sense if if everybody's moving fast right now, it would make sense for everybody just to drop all blobs. I think like Francis suggested, and then maybe later on we'll come up with some strategy what to do at the fork boundary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Pari, do you want to tee up the get blobs conversation, the second part of this?
Yes, sure. So the question from Ansgar was, are we doing devnets without get blobs at all? And purely because we need to be sure that the network is stable, even if the get blobs v1 or v2 is not working as expected. And I think the follow-up comment I had there is, I think even 4844 has gotten a lot more stable once we've gotten get blobs. So I'm not even sure if mainnet without get blobs can support too many more blobs, but I agree, I don't have exact data. I remember there was some initial ones based on cryptographic libraries. Maybe Ansgar, Carl, and then Francesco.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I do think it's kind of important, because the kind of these explorations are supposed to give us the targets that we go for Fusaka. So I do think it's important that we only choose targets that are at least, I would call it like semi-stable without get blobs, meaning that there's some trade-offs we can do, right? So if weak nodes are usually like too late on the testing for these blocks, that's in principle fine, because they still end up rejoining. They will still get the blobs just a little bit later. So as long as overall the blobs are still reliably accepted by the chain, that would in principle be fine. So I think we can make some compromises, or for example, run these devnets with somewhat higher bandwidth assumptions and these kind of things. But it can't be completely breaking, right? Like we could not check any throughput numbers where without get blobs just usually don't arrive on time.
Francesco?
Yeah, so something I first wanted to ask, when you say that things are not working without get blobs, what scenario exactly? I mean, I guess two questions. One is like, is this based on the devnets from the Sunnyside people or something else? And also like, I think there's a difference in things not working based on who is the proposer. Like, if things don't work when you don't have get blobs and the proposer is someone with very low bandwidth, I think that's kind of fine. Like I think that's partially a lot of the point of get blobs is to allow people with lower upload bandwidth to still be able to propose, possibly at higher blob counts. If things don't work when you have someone with gigabit, then like, yeah, that's really not fine. So I think we should differentiate between maybe these like three cases, like having get blobs, or rather like four cases, like get blobs, no get blobs, and also who is the proposer, like how much bandwidth do they have. And yeah, we should care about different cases differently.
Yeah, I think my point to get blobs itself was based on 4844 before and after on mainnet data. Client teams did notice significantly better performance around October, November once they started rolling out get blobs. Seems to have reduced reorg rate, reduced like helped on a lot of levels. So I think that was mostly the basis for that. And having get blobs was also part of the decision-making process for increasing the blob number because the network is stable overall in general. But I agree with you that I think we do need to have numbers for all three. So we probably need a way to disable get blobs and choose if a client uses get blobs v1 or get blobs v2. And I don't think we have that ability right now, besides using like an older version of a client.
Yeah, and I think it's not even just a question of like being able to do this is not just a question of like, do we need get blobs to have a certain throughput or not, but also just like we're probably likely to not be able to figure out that there's some maybe low-hanging fruits on the CL, like to implement like propagation and so on, or just like issues. If we can't actually observe like by itself, how does that work? Like if we kind of just rely on get blobs in all of the devnets, then we can't really figure out what's actually going on the CL propagation path.
Sorry, Stokes and then Saba.
Yeah, this might be a tangent, but why would a client use getblobs v1 if they have getblobs v2?
Who's that for? Who's the question for?
Whoever can answer.
Yeah, at Quiz, we just decided not to use getblob v2 at all for PeerDAS. We did not implement it, and we are going to use directly getblob v2.
Yeah, I think so. The answer would be no one would really use v1 once v2 is live on mainnet.
Okay, gotcha.
Ditto from Nimbus in the chat. Saba.
Yeah, Francesco said it already mainly, but so with getblobs, we are really superseding the data, and it's really important to test without that to see what the CL can do. So I think that that's very important for the learning. Not because we want to maybe tune based on that, but that what allows teams to fix the errors in the CL diffusion. So I think I would do it at least for that. And then tuning the numbers is another question.
Francis, did you have something to add?
Yes. I think I agree that it would be great to test like purely CL like diffusion of the data, etc. But it seems to me that, or at least from my experience working on Prism, like get blobs is a little bit like baked in right now. And if maybe like with get blobs v2 as well, do we want to spend or my question is, do we want to prioritize this, or do we want to say maybe let's get blobs v2 and then the whole thing work better first, and then when we have time, and then we prioritize maybe finding a way to kind of like disable get blobs and test the CL network diffusion.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to first get blobs v2 working on all clients, because I think we're not there yet. But yeah, agreed. First, we should get blobs v2 working, and then keep all of the analysis steps in mind.
Saba.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is that so get blobs should start working less and less as we are increasing the blob count. So I mean, just because of that, at least until we have server messaging. So just because of that, I would test without it, so to make sure that we are not relying on something that then hits back easily when we have increased blob count.
Francesca.
Yeah, just want to like push back a little. Just I do think that it is we're kind of getting to a point where like it really would be nice to be able to know like what can the CL handle, like what's like a blob throughput that just based on the CL propagation path you can actually handle. I not saying now abandon all the get blobs work and go and like find a way to disable it, but I do think that it's not something that we can like just push off forever. Like I think there's somewhat of an urgency to having a better idea of how that works.
Ansgar.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with what Francesco said, but also specifically clarify, right? Like if we, to the extent that we do run devnets without get blobs, the important thing is that we don't actually want to test the bottleneck of the proposer. So it's basically important that these devnets are set up where the proposers have at least in first pass approximation infinite bandwidth, so at least a gigabit, ideally even above that, so that we really are certain that we are not specifically testing that bottleneck, because we have other mitigations in place for those bottlenecks on the live network. So yeah, I think that would be important that these devnets specifically focus on just figuring out the propagation after the first hop.
Great. So if there's anything else, feel free to jump in right now, or we'll move on to conclude the back half of the agenda. Alex, I believe that you added the top two things in the comments to the agenda, open comment on the EIP and then a consensus spec.
Yeah, so I think we've touched on them. Let me go see what we need to still talk about. Sorry, 1 second. I lost the agenda item that I had. Okay, hang on. Right. I mean, I guess okay, so the first one, I would just like to merge this PR. I think the one last comment that you linked here was around this V0 behavior, that there was a comment there. I think Francesco said he took that out already, and as long as we're okay with that, then yeah, I would like a last call. And what I really mean here is, can we merge this after this call? I think it's good enough for now, but I wonder if there are any final comments.
Great. Francesco, you had your hand up. I don't know if that was from previous conversation or this.
No, previous, sorry.
Oh, no sweat. Okay. And then Francis, if you want to provide an update, I've got all of your open PRs related to cell-proof computation. I don't know if this is if you're best.
Yeah. So for as long as we are okay with the EIP and that is merged, I believe all the PRs here can be merged as well. The only caveat here is that on the Beacon API side, I added something related to the get blob sidecar API to indicate that okay, after the fork, we can keep this API, but clients can choose to return blob proofs or no proofs by their like own choice. And so that's kind of like the main thing. We can take it out if we think that there's still something to debate there, but other than that, all the other parts I believe are already hashed out. So yes, if we are going to like merge the EIPs, we would love to make a fast follow-up to merge the 3 APIs that is kind of like related to that EIP as well.
Okay, great. Dan, there's just an open EIP here that's related to testing. I believe this is just a tracking issue. So we can move beyond that unless you want to flag it. And then Manu, this is, I believe, what you added just recently, maybe late last night,
Yeah.
related to Beacon API.
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea of this one is when a validator wants to propose a block, so he calls produce block v3 from the beacon node, and the beacon node just sends the blocks, the KZG proof and the blobs. The validator client signs the block and returns the signed block, the KZG proof and the blobs directly to the beacon node, and then the beacon node can publish the block and the sidecars on the network. The fact is, the validator client does not do anything with the proofs and the blobs, and actually it's very convenient to have blobs and proof in these endpoints, because after, when the beacon node wants to propose a block, it has all the needed information in the payload. However, I did some small computation for 48 blobs with a 1 gigabits per second connection. The back and forth time to transmit the blobs are about 100 milliseconds. Yeah, we can say it's not an issue right now, even with 48 blobs, but maybe with 96 blobs, it will be 200 milliseconds, and so on. Actually, the duration needed to transmit the data between the validator client and the beacon node is proportional with the blob count. And so this pull request this issue just proposed to remove the proofs and the blobs from the payload of Beacon API request with some cons. And the main con is we switch from a stateless Beacon API to a stateful Beacon API. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thanks. I don't know if there's any comments on that PR. If not, I do want to go back and double click on the sorry,
Yeah, just this
9378.
first one. Yeah. Yeah, like I think Gajinder was here, and Gajinder or Daplion. Yeah, this comment here. There was this extension about having the 0 value be a valid byte that then treats the wrapper with the version byte as a 4x4 style transaction. Can we just drop this for now?
Yeah, no problem for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I removed it already. So
Yeah,
if you want
well,
to
the
add it
question
in,
is if we want to add it back in, but no, let's just leave it like it is for now. I think we need an EIP editor to merge this in, but I will ping one after the call.
Great. There were 2 other draft spec PRs. Katja, we talked about this last week. I'm just gonna kind of carry it on the agenda. Feel free to let us know if there's anything timely that you want to discuss with it. And then the other one was, oh, yeah, this was, I don't know, Dan, if you have visibility on this, I believe, oh, this is just noting, picking up some post-prog refactors. I didn't know if that should be glommed into PeerDAS or not. But I will remove
Hey,
it
Will,
from the
sorry,
list if
were
not.
you were referring to the execution specs PR?
Yes.
I don't think that's very relevant, to be honest.
Okay, great. I'll remove it then. Gotcha.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm just happy that metrics are definitely needed now, and I think we have a beacon metrics repo, so probably we need the same for EL clients. Yeah, Perry is here, right? So probably we need to initiate another one.
Yeah, I can create one, but I think EL metrics are a bit more wild than even CL ones. But yeah, we can at least give it a try.
Yeah, so probably we will update it for PeerDAS as well. And I would like to collab with this Sunnyside team because they will actively use it. So yeah, just tag me in the Discord, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I can give you once the repository is created.
Yeah, with this new metrics for Get Blobs, I will probably follow one of the teams. I don't know, like Plotstar or Teku, who is going to deliver it soon, so we can check. Thank you.
And then lastly, Justin, I saw you note this in the Discord yesterday. Didn't know if I'm just going to flag it here, but you've got a scheduled release for later this week.
We've actually already made it. We decided to do it yesterday. So I just shared a link in the chat.
Excellent. And then Stokes, I clipped your table in here from the HackMD that you released last week, your proposal for a BPO blob schedule. If this is seemed to be one of the discussion items, if you want to tee it up at all.
Sure, yeah. So I think the document is linked there where it says here, but essentially the idea is just what is here in this table. So it's just a concrete proposal for something, you know, that roughly looks like this BPO idea. And it would be like a concrete suggestion for how we think about scaling blobs in Fusaka. So yeah, high level, the idea is, I believe it's EIP 7982 from ETHDreamer, and it's just a configuration. You say, for example, at this epoch or slot, the blob should look like this, both max target and then also the fee parameter, but that's yeah, not here in this table. Either way, the proposal would be say, okay, we have Fusaka at the current blob parameter counts. You give 2 weeks for like an observation period, just to make sure that like the PeerDAS mechanism works well at the current blob counts. From there, you then aim to double the blob counts every 2 months until we get to the theoretical max of PeerDAS. And yeah, mainly I put this together just to open this discussion. It'd be good to have people think about this, and if we could agree to this as the thing we want to do for Fusaka, that'd be great. Getting an agreement on the strategy over the next few months, I think, would be really valuable. And I guess the other obvious thing is just simply that, yeah, if we go to like future PeerDAS devnets, or even as we get to like Fulu devnets, we might see that we need to adjust these numbers. You could both parameterize the increase here and also the timing of the steps. But yeah, so I think that's the sufficient context for now. And yeah, I mean, I'd be curious for any feedback if anyone has any. There's different ways to think about this. You could have like this exact schedule is like pretty blocky. It's like piecewise linear. You could imagine that we have a more continuous function, and there's trade-offs to either strategy. But yeah, for now, I think the ask is just to take a look at this, think about it, and it would be nice to have some kind of consensus over the next few months on what we actually want to do.
Tony.
Yeah, maybe just to add to this EIP, it would be nice if we can directly use it to automate the blob base fee update fraction, because currently the EIP is just using dummy values. And if we say we are fine with the target being 2/3 of the max, then we can, yeah, have a very simple formula. I posted it in a comment to Stokes comment, and yeah, this could be done in one go. And also the other EIP 7691 with the blob increase also defined the blob base fee update fraction, so we might just stick to that.
Agnesh, was there anything that you wanted to note on this? I saw there's some chat in the comments.
Just to mention, in Nimbus, every fork is it behaves like a strong type, and everything, like all of the functionality is kind of encircled around that. If you are raising blob count, then the most, like the best solution that would adhere to our architecture currently is don't change the fork name. If that can be done, then it's very limited changes for us. But like with every blob count increase, if the BPF fork name changes, then I think we would have some problems.
Yeah, I gotta say that's the whole point of the BPO forks. In Lighthouse, again, it's very expensive to add a new fork name. We need to do like 2,000 lines of boilerplate. So yeah, the idea would be to not have a different name.
Yeah, in that case, it's fine. It's okay for us because of the same issues. Yeah.
Great. And then we'll, if we're ready to move on from that, Francis, I added the summary on the Beacon API Get Blob sidecar discussion here. If you wanted to speak to that, if there's areas where you need direction.
Okay. I'll quickly touch on the previous one a little bit. So I think like at least from base side, we're like very like supportive, like super supportive of this like proposal. And one thing we'd like to hash it out, maybe a little bit further with you guys is that what kind of like scenarios or what kind of like metrics information that we want to see to basically approve or like revert the scheduled changes. And if we get that kind of like really nailed down, that would be great, so that we have clarity on like how we're going to proceed. And please work with us and Solid Labs and all the folks to see, okay, so that we can produce those like repetitive or like automated like testing or like metrics gathering stuff, so that you guys we all can use and like guide the like next increases. So yeah, that's on the BPO schedule one. And for the second one, I think it's a small change. Basically, like after Fulu or after like the Susaka like hard fork, on the CL side, we don't store blobs directly anymore. Like we only store data columns. And from the client perspective, mostly L2s, we only care about blobs. So the idea is that basically to propose that we keep the old get blob sidecar API, and CLs implement a little bit of the conversion or reconstruction logic based on if they have the enough columns or not. And they only reconstruct the blobs, but not the proofs, just to like save the computation time and like CPU whatever. And when they pass things back, we don't change any of the existing schemas. When they pass things back, they can choose to pass back 0 values for the blob proof, or they can choose to pass any kind of like fake blob proofs. And on the client side, we treat the API as trusted, so that we don't verify the blob proofs and directly use it, so that we can minimize the amount of changes on the CL side, but also keep the kind of like relatively simple and API for like external clients without worrying about like underlying data columns, etc., etc.
Great. And then just, I guess, trying to make sure that we have rough consensus on this BPO blob schedule before moving on. This seems like an important one. Any dissent on that? Right.
One thing I wanted to bring up was the topic of how that would look like. So we would have, I've posted a message there with, say, you'd have max blobs per block BPO1 and then max blobs per block BPO2. This would have an associated activation epoch. But the question is if we're not doing it that way, because Agni said it might be problematic, then how does that look?
Why is it problematic?
I'm not sure. I would want him
Yeah,
to
I mean, I
expand on that, I
feel
guess.
like he
Okay.
said in the chat it might be okay.
So as long as we are under the same fork version, I think we should be fine because our fork version are strong types and everything is kind of sort of overloaded to that strong type. Let's say beacon state or like almost everything within the code base. So yeah, so I mean, if you raise the blob count and it behaves like a hard fork kind of, that is a problem. But yeah, I get
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
But
You have
it doesn't. So
it doesn't have
the
to
idea,
be.
yeah, the idea is that it doesn't, right? So your client would read this config, and you would just need like the only real complication I see is if you use max blobs as some like typed parameter, like a compile time thing that is harder to change. This issue has come up in previous contexts with other features, and I think clients have found workarounds or just different ways to structure it. So the only real thing would just be moving, if this is say like a compile time constant, it's just now a dynamic thing. And it is just Fusaka, there's one fork. Then you just have this config that says, okay, at epoch X, the blobs are this, at epoch Y, the blobs are that. And then you just proceed as usual.
Yeah,
Like the whole idea here was to get away from having clients to make new formal hard forks, let's call it.
right. Okay. So in that case, I think it's
Yeah, I also just changed what the parameter can be called. I mean, it can be BPO epoch. Doesn't have to have the word fork in it. And that would also work on the EL side because they have a blob schedule either ways.
All right. Looks like we're at time. Was there anything that anyone wanted to highlight? Feel like you're not getting closure or consensus on? If not, I promise to get the Zoom invite fixed for next call. Apologies for that again. Great. Kev, I see your note about ZKG. I'll make sure that we discuss it in the next call. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.